On this full-time roundup bonus episode, Danny Bram squared preview the MLS season. We talk coaching carousel, seasons of signings, and of course, wouldn't be a preview show without getting awards on the docket and in the record books. Full-time roundup starts right now.
There we go. We're back. We're back and better than ever.
We are back, guys. Welcome in. Of course, if you are watching us on YouTube, you see a new face to the show. Not a new face to us, not a new face to some of our listeners, as we're welcoming the one and only Danny Brams from the Charlotte Soccer Show, one of our great friends. Brams, always good to see you. Thank you for doing this. Welcome into another episode of Full-Time Roundup. We did a preview or roundup show of MLS last time with you, and now we're going to get the preview show down with you as MLS, exciting guys, kicks off in only a couple hours tonight.
MLS is back, baby. Thanks for the welcome.
It is back.
Being here with you guys.
Absolutely. Of course, just want to get some admin stuff out of the way. If you guys are not following or listening to the Charlotte Soccer Show, go check them out. Of course, Danny Brams and John Hayes do an amazing job over there. You can also follow them on X at Full-Time Roundup, or excuse me, that's us, For the Crown, baby. I get a little bit ahead of myself there. Follow us at Full-Time Roundup. Yes, exactly. And of course, there's a couple great episodes that they've been doing of late with the preview of Charlotte FC. They also had Bradley Wright Phillips recently, which was an absolute masterpiece of an episode with great interview of one of the MLS legends. And then, of course, Danny, we wouldn't be doing you guys a justice without getting into our watch party at Hopfly this weekend. Do you want to give us a little bit of a taste of what the listeners can expect at Hopfly on Saturday before the game?
Basically, probably the best way to get ready for the game and pregame and have a really good, fun, just kind of absurdist soccer immersion experience. We have Hopfly Brewing is right down Main Street, about a 5-minute walk down from the stadium. So we're going to get going around there around 4 o'clock. We will have a booth set up. We'll have some special beers. We will have some microphones set up. So Johnny and I will be kind of like emceeing, just inviting people in from the sidewalk, you know, teeing up, interacting with the DJ and stuff like that. We'll have a DJ. We will have Rare and Retro Soccer is going to be there, local vintage jersey shop, one of the best. They have shops here in Charlotte and in Atlanta. They're going to have a booth set up with some vintage jerseys you can buy. You can buy them there, and then they'll ship them to you, or you can like buy them there and then go pick them up the next day. It's not, you don't have to carry it around all day if you want to buy, or you can just window shop. You can browse. We'll have a photo booth set up. We got like a big, little backdrop for people to have fun and get some stuff for the gram and just have a good old time. We're, Hopfly is a really cool spot because it's so open. It's really open and airy, and just you can kind of blend inside and outside. You can go upstairs, downstairs. We'll be in the parking lot 4 to whenever. And then when the 11s drop, when the lineup drops about an hour or so before kickoff, John and I will jump on the air. We'll have our camera set up and do a quick little live stream there reacting to the lineups, so that if you're not at the party, you can watch that. I can't fault anyone if they want to go to the official tailgate down on McNick Street, obviously. And but pop your phone up and stream us there. Bring us to the tailgate since we won't be there. But that is going to be a really fun party, and then we will shut it down after about 30 minutes of streaming and pack everything up and have one last beer and walk to the keep.
That sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm hyped.
Like a lot of fun.
I know that, like we said, Danny, the fun is just beginning. It's starting today. Of course, we'll have Inter Miami, Messi kicking us off this season, playing Real Salt Lake tonight.
It's a good thing we're getting this preview episode in, guys, because the season is legitimately hours away. So
exactly.
Only a couple of hours
we're doing it. So let's get right into it. With that being said, so we can get this out and let the listeners get it in before
no one cares about
changes.
Miami anyway.
No one cares about Miami, but we do want to get your thoughts on a couple of things, of course. So the way that this will go is, as some of our listeners know, I am not as an avid MLS fan as these two are. So I'm going to be the host, kind of driving the conversation, the questions. Of course, I'll chime in and give my thoughts as well. But these two are the experts. So I want to just get their thoughts on a couple of questions around MLS this season. Of course, it was a really fun, exciting season last season, as always is the case with new teams popping up. Of course, we had St. Louis, a nice surprise in their expansion season. I know that rubs Danny Brams the wrong way, as they've harped on them on the show, but a lot of just good action that came out of the league last year, and hoping to see that extend. Of course, part of some of that, Danny, is just the way that Apple TV has kind of amplified their coverage and taken over the sport essentially here in the US. So just want to dive in quickly on that as the opening question. From a fan's perspective, what have you thought about Apple TV being part of the MLS network of family essentially? And of course they've announced a couple of changes. You talked with Bradley Wright Phillips about a few of them the other day. Of course, he didn't want to share too much, but will this be a better viewing experience for fans this year in your eyes, or kind of what should we expect going into season 2 of Apple TV?
I hope so, because whatever you think about Apple, whether you love them or hate them, I think they would at least generally have a universal reputation of like improving and iterating and getting better over time. So hopefully they'll get a little bit better. I always never loved the game broadcast. I never had any beef with any game broadcast. I go to a lot of games, season ticket holder for the Crown, obviously. So I a lot of times am stumbling out of an Uber and like passing out on my couch after a long night of partying at the Keep, and just like have the 10:30 the West Coast games that going on in the background and stuff like that, So there is that, and then so I don't see like the times that when Charlotte has a few have bye weeks, or when they're in an away game, and I've watched some of the other coverage. The game coverage is great. The graphics look clean and everything. I'm interested to see what Phillips was talking about, with the changes and whatnot coming to 360, because I love a wraparound show. I love the idea. I always thought MLS needed a wraparound show, kind of like NFL Sunday Ticket. But when I saw it in execution last year, I didn't love it. I still think it's obviously a good idea that they need to keep working on until it's great, until everyone does love it. So hopefully they've made some really great steps in that direction.
And one thing to kind of mention off that is, if you're a season ticket holder, at least for Charlotte FC, you get a free MLS pass, which is a pretty cool thing they did. I don't know if that's a universal thing.
It is. Yep. All season ticket holders. Yeah. All teams.
That's really cool. I mean, that's something to appreciate.
I know a lot of people, if you're like, what, where I haven't heard anything about that, check your spam folder. I actually have talked to people just even today that were like, hey, where's my MLS season pass? And it was in their spam folders.
Yeah, and it will be interesting to see, of course, they are the primary host of MLS games. So if you are an MLS fan, you're obviously listening to us here on this episode. Go check it out. See if you need to get, either have season tickets or get the MLS pass. I had it last year for a little while. It was quite interesting that you could do specific teams, I believe, if I remember correctly, or the whole league. And then there was different.
What I really love is, sorry to cut you off, but I love the replayability. I love the fact how easy it is to go back and watch the Charlotte game over again, like with a couple of clicks and stuff like that, and queue up specific goals. There was a Christmas time project I did where I wanted to rank all the goals from 1 to 60. And it was so easy to just go to like one page on the Apple app and be able to like queue up any goal I wanted to call up on demand. So I definitely think like it's good. Over time, people are going to start to appreciate it more. But hopefully the 360 show goes from like good to great, here in year 2, or at least steps in that direction.
Yeah, but you mentioned it on the show with Bradley. Of course, Apple always iterates and looks to improve. So we'll see how that transpires this year. Of course, they have individual shows. They had the Messi documentary, and not to get too far in the weeds on Messi, but obviously he is going to be setting us off tonight with his Inter Miami team, and just want to quickly touch on it. Wanted to get your thoughts of maybe retrospectively and we talked about this on the roundup episode as well, but maybe a little bit more time to think about it. What was your take on the Messi experiment last season? And what does that look like for you going into season 2? A little bit more comfort for him. He'll have a few more of his friends around him, of course, with some signings in the off season. But what does the Messi experiment look like for Danny Brams, and maybe more holistically at the league's perspective? And does this continue to grow the league like MLS expected it to when he signed?
I think there's a little bit of a chip on the shoulder still, just of like, a little bit of feeling he's a carpetbagger or whatnot, just kind of coming in and sucking up all the attention. And so it's like the thing you want, like the best case scenario of Messi coming in is like, oh, well, his all the attention on him will like help eyes to be on other players who will shine. And, that rising tide will lift all the boats, and people will see how good other MLSers are because they showed up to watch Messi. And I'm not saying that doesn't happen, but I mean, everything is so much just about him that I don't know if there's even room being, space being created for that to happen. So we'll see. But I'm down on Miami. Once we start getting into the predictions, let me wait, because when we get to predictions, that'll be my time to crap all over Inter Flamingos for sure.
Love it.
Flamingos. And kind of piggybacking off that, with the Messi experience and him wanting to bring his crew, you could say, to MLS. MLS actually, I was thinking at least that in the offseason they would make kind of a lot of changes to roster flexibility. You got Copa America coming to town this summer. You have the World Cup in 2 years. Do you think MLS did enough to kind of update the roster rules and flexibility, or do you think we still have a long time to go?
Oh, I don't think they did enough at all. I mean, come on now. What are we talking about? They barely did anything, right? I mean, they made a few tweaks and stuff like that, but really they just let Miami kind of run roughshod and do whatever they want to sign a bunch of big money players, and then at the last second they're like shedding salary here right before the end of the preseason. We see it in the Open Cup. MLS, did nothing to a lot of the problems that are going on, and I'm certainly not the perfectly versed person to talk about the dispute between MLS and US Open Cup and how US soccer's role and all that. But what I gauge from the situation, without like following the details every single day, is just that they're working on a proposal to make it happen. A bunch of people have quit, and they're working on a proposal to make it happen with limited MLS participation. And, like the big issue is if, some people will say, oh, well, MLS just wants money or whatever. And you can think that, and that might be true. But like, if you go by their stated reason, which was wear and tear on our players playing the US Open Cup for very little return in smaller stadiums and stuff like that, well, then opening up, you could have solved that with just more roster flexibility, like you said. So they could have said, well, let's just make a rule that says Open Cup games, you can call up your whole next pro team if you want for 48 hours and send them back with no penalties or something like that. Like they could have made that rule, and then it would, instead of having to like pull their teams from the tournament, and try to insert the next pro franchises. That was just a big mistake, because they could have just figured out a way to make sure all the next pro guys were playing under the first team badge in that tournament. But regardless of that, I don't think MLS has done enough to really sort of reassure the public and fans that all is that all is well and 100% aligned towards the betterment and development of the game over a pure profit motive.
When it comes to change, one thing they did change apparently is the referees, and the referees were fairly abysmal last year, but they had the strike, and then now there's 30 something new referees coming in. So that should be an interesting experience to see if it improves, somehow gets worse, or it's actually just on par with last year.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm the type of guy, I'm a big labor movement supporter. I'm pro-union. I'm pro all of it, In real life, I'm very pro-labor. As a soccer fan, I don't really care who the referees are. I'm just going to be honest. Like, I really don't. I mean, I guess I don't believe, just being perfectly honest, sorry to be insulting, but I don't believe that PRO, the Professional Referees Organization of MLS, has really maintained a very super high standard. So I don't really know how bad could the scabs and replacement referees be that are going to come in and be working these games against the union. On a human level, I really don't like to see labor defeated by management in a corporate sense like that. But I just think referees should be anonymous. Give me robot referees 100%, and we'll all be happier. But I hope they all work it out for sure. Just tell me, you know what? When I get to the match, when I turn the match on TV or arrive at the stadium, I'm going to look down and see whichever guy looks like he doesn't belong there, and I'm going to know that's the referee, and the other 22 guys are the guys I came to see. So.
Well, we got a lot of admin stuff out of the way. Of course, wanted to touch on some of that, but of course, the what everyone wants to talk about, what we love watching, aside from the referees and whether they're the right guys on the field, is the actual play on the field itself, right, guys? Mm-hmm. So want to dive into some topics here and just get your guys' thoughts. Topics. A lot of new faces this season behind the benches. It seems like almost a third of the clubs have new managers. Danny Brams, we're going to get to Charlotte FC specifically later on. So, kind of just leave that one a little bit when I ask you this question. But who do you think is going to have the biggest impact on their team? And we can run through them quickly. Of course, you have a new manager at Chicago Fire, Colorado Rapids.
Frank Klopp is the Pickle King.
Yep,
Chris
Minnesota
Armas, the
United.
retread at Colorado.
Phil Neville at Timbers.
The last minute option at Minnesota.
Yeah, the last everyone at where can I find him? Caleb Porter's going to New England Revolution after everything that happened with Bruce Arena last season. There's a whole host of them. So anyone in particular that stands out that's going to have the biggest impact for you guys this season? And I pose that question to both of you as to get your thoughts on that.
I've been talking all night DB brackets. Why don't you take this first?
All right, I'm really high on Caleb Porter and what he's got going on at New England.
It was a mistake to let you go first. I mean, whatever. I'll let you finish, but that's wrong.
I'm sorry I stole your fire.
No. I won't be.
No, not a fire.
Porter.
No, I was going to say it's not a fire thing.
Yeah.
But I thought he did a great job at his previous jobs. With the whole thing that went down with New England last year, that was just really weird. Not really going to touch on that too much, but they have a decent roster. They're going to rely on some young kids. They got that winger that I couldn't even pronounce his name if I wanted to.
Chankalai.
Yep. Well, Chankalai, but then they have the American kids. To be back to rest or something like that. So I'm pretty high on Caleb Porter in New England. Now they are in the East, and the East is kind of stacked, but I think he's probably the one to make a difference. And I'm going to spin zone here. One that is not going to make a difference. Phil Neville, because he's a terrible manager.
Yeah, I mean, Neville going. I don't know why Portland was so quick to fill their spot with Phil Neville. I remember at that point of the Charlotte FC coaching search, I was like, yeah, at least we don't have to worry. We're not, he's off the market, thank God. We don't have to worry about hearing stories about him showing up for an interview. Yeah, I mean, Neville famously is going to be the guy who managed Miami right before Messi showed up. So when they lost, I think they went 17 matches with no wins, and I feel bad. I don't want to just savage the guy, but it doesn't seem good. The situation in Portland isn't great either, as far as they're kind of in year they're saying the long goodbye, if you will, to a sort of previous era of Portland Timbers, where that was dominated by Diego Valeri and Sebastian Blanco, kind of being two of the best attacking players in the league. Valeri walked away, permanently a couple of years ago, and he's actually now working for Apple TV as we on the Spanish language MLS 360. And Blanco finally is gone too. Blanco tried to soldier on for a year and a half or so after Valeri left, but he's finally gone. Diego Chara is still there, but Jimmy Chara, his brother, who came up from Colombia for a couple of years, has gone back to Colombia. He's playing down there for Deportivo somebody. And so so now they have Evander come in as their big money signing they brought in last year, probably the biggest bust DP of the season last year, saving the Enzo Copetti from that title. And now Evander is talking about he wants to leave, and they had a deal where he could have left and gone to Europe, back to Europe this summer. And he said Portland nixed it, even though he wanted to go. It's Bologna or something like that, or some team over there. So it's just a bad situation in Portland overall, and Neville doesn't seem like the guy to fix it based on the bad situation results he had in Miami. So I'm with you on that take. My pick for who is going to be the best is Dean, and that's biased, but also I think when you just look at this list, it's pretty easy to see. Porter is a former MLS Cup winning coach, so I can't totally take that away from him. He has his fans and his haters, Caleb Porter, so who knows? But I mean, he certainly is accomplished. Give me, though, off the list of new coaches, Troy Lesesne or whatever. Troy Lesesne, I think is his name. Carolina roots. He's a Carolina guy. Worked for the Charlotte Independents here in town at one point. Taken over for DC United. Taken over for Wayne Rooney. And not that I think DC
disaster
is great, but I just think Rooney was so checked out and just so not into it and not really up to the job of building a franchise necessarily. So just for the sheer upgrade of someone who is an up and coming young gun coach who has some ideas versus kind of a guy who was just here collecting paychecks because he needed an ocean between him and his tabloid gossip queen wife for a couple of years. Give me Troy, baby.
I'm going to go a different route, a team that hasn't been mentioned but has made a lot of signings this summer. I think when you look at it, just also can't be any worse than they've been the last couple of seasons. I think Chris Armas is going to have just a little bit of an easy route to make, again, improvement from where Colorado has been, which has been in the dumpsters for the last couple of seasons of MLS. So
he's going to need it because he's really struggled lately, and I was surprised that he was the guy they put in charge of their rebuild, because I actually love everybody they've brought in, and we'll talk more about it.
Yep.
But seemed like a weird one to put in charge.
Agreed. I just think you can't get any worse than they've been. So I think he may be motivated, and
he imploded at Red Bulls and failed spectacularly at Toronto. So maybe he's motivated. Dino Smith's coming off a couple recent failures before he got it.
Never know. You learn from your failure, right? So we'll see if he can do that there. Now, switching gears from players or coaches to players, you mentioned some of the moves that Colorado brought in that you really like, Danny. Anyone in particular that made the biggest moves during the offseason, or is Colorado one of those teams that kind of just stands out to you? Of course, we can talk about some of the players in Miami that they added, but Colorado added a lot of good pieces to that roster. Is that the biggest move during the offseason?
I'm going to start with hot take that Suarez is not going to do it. Suarez is really going to bust pretty hardcore.
He can't even run. He has no knees right now. So
yeah, I just don't see Suarez playing 1,000 minutes this year, which would be 10 games. I don't think he gets to 1,000 minutes personally. So we'll see. Could be wrong, but I don't think it happens. As far as who I think is a good signing, it's Georgi Mihailovic in Colorado. And Colorado with a full rebuild, bringing a lot of guys. They brought Sam Vines back from Belgian League. They bring Jordy from the Dutch League. Georgie has, an MLS freaking stud for a couple of years at Chicago and Montreal. Didn't really find his way into playing time at AZ Alkmaar in Dutchland. So he's back. And that was the guy I really coveted for Charlotte to bring back. Once we started hearing that Georgie, wants back to MLS, and this is a guy who's in the U.S. men's national program. He's probably like the fringe, 6th or 7th playmaker. He's not, not necessarily going to be a starter in 2026, but he would be my starter because I love this kid. But so I was like, Charlotte needs to go get him, Charlotte, go get him, Charlotte. Ends up he comes to Colorado, which I thought was weird at the time, but now they've brought in other signings. He's not the only guy that they've brought in. If I look up,
Zach Steffen, Sammy Vines.
I was going to say,
Steffen. I mean, Steffen is Steffen. I get it. Steffen. What has Steffen ever really done? But
he won the cup with Columbus. No.
Yeah, okay, I guess that's something. But
that was early in his career, though. And then he went and sat on the bench at City.
After that, he went to City. But Sammy Vines is solid.
Lawfulsend is a really nice pickup from Salt Lake. He's an MLS veteran who knows how to create goals in this league. Omir Fernandez from Red Bulls, another very, very nice pickup. Navarro is serviceable. Sam Vines, like I said, they brought him back. They got this dude from the French league, Lamina Diac, to play DM. So they did I think they have the most incoming transfers of all Colorado. And I'm not going to say it's all going to work, but the linchpin of it being Mihailovic gives it a chance. I do think Armas might be the biggest factor as to why that might not work. But what do I know? Armas is a much better coach than me. I can promise you that much.
I'm going to go with Matt's alma mater team here. He might be wearing, rumor on the street is he might be wearing his famous New York City FC hat on Saturday. But New York City FC were busy.
It's like a way to get it famously destroyed, that hat. But yeah, keep going.
There's some things I cannot say yet that I will not be wearing that hat for. So we'll just leave it at that.
All jokes. But Jovan Mihailovic, a striker, 18-year-old, commanded an $8.6 million transfer fee. Andres Pereira from Philly, he was on loan last year but performed well. Agustin Ojeda from Racing Club. I think you mentioned that on your last CSS pod. He's a good one. And then Hannes Wolf from the Bundesliga with Gladbach. 4, I guess technically, really intriguing signings there. Hopefully they're all not ready for first game of the season, but I could see New York City FC kind of, playing a lot better than they did last year.
Yeah. I'm worried because we sort of have this in the Charlotte FC thing. It's like, we never lose to them because we never have lost to them in 2 years of being a franchise. But I'm really worried about the remake that they look dangerous.
I'm going to go with one of the teams that you guys have talked about. Your co-host has been high on Atlanta and just what they've done there in the offseason too. I don't know if it's the biggest moves of the offseason, but I do think that they've added some good pieces. And of course, they had a down year last year for the standard that they've had since they entered the league. And of course, winning MLS Cup in their first season or close to it. I think they're going to bounce back, and they made some good moves. But I definitely agree with you guys. Those two clubs that you mentioned, both, of course, made big splashes in the offseason. To your point, Danny, will Chris Armas be able to get those pieces together and go in the right direction? We'll see. And it kind of leads me into my next question for both of you guys is based off of the moves that you've both discussed. Give me a team, both good and bad, that you think will surprise you this year. We'll start with good. Danny Brackett, because again, I'm double DB squared here, so I got to be very specific with who I'm asking. Brackett, who give me a team that will surprise you on the good side this season?
That's a good question. Now, I've been really thinking about this just because, especially with some of these, there's like 3 or 4 teams that have rebuilt in a major way. And I'm going to go with a pick that I can't believe I'm about to say because it's a very toxic club, but LA Galaxy. LA Galaxy. They got rid of Chicharito. They got rid of Douglas Costa. They got rid of Tyler Boyd. And they brought in Joe Paintsel, $9 million from Genk. They brought in Mickey Yamin, international teammate of Yoshida. And then they signed a kid named Gabriel Peck for $10 million. I think he was from Brazil. And they still got Ricky Puig in the middle. And I'm going to save my prediction for later, but I think if Puig has some guys around him who can actually put the ball in the back of the net, this team is going to be extremely dangerous in a West standings that is not as strong as the East.
Wow.
And then you said one bad. I'm going to go with, I think Orlando. I don't think Orlando is going to be good. I know they just signed Luis Marial, but they lost, their veteran captain. And, maybe Facu Torres finally goes nuclear this season. But a lot of the predictions had them pretty high up the table, and I just don't buy it.
Can't go wrong with either pick. Brams, different direction, same feeling. How are we feeling?
I mean, there's literally 7 teams probably that I could just throw right off the top of my head that I think are going to be disappointing. I don't know why. But I'll try. What can I say about a team that will be better this year? Surprisingly good. I kind of believe in DC. Like I said, I think the new coach is a big deal. It's tough for me to like, I don't know, but that no one's really like jumping out at me. But just knowing that DC did bring in a lot of signings as well. I think New York City also a good shout. I kind of feel like some of these teams we've already talked about, Colorado, DC, New York City, those are teams that I look at to like make moves to be better than they were last year, like significantly better. I like the Galaxy shout a little bit because Galaxy can't always turn it around quickly. But I'll throw Sporting KC as a team we haven't talked about yet, but I think just kind of had a flukishly bad year last year. If they don't have a good year, if I'm wrong about KC and they come out and suck again early, it's like total tear down rebuild time in KC because they've been hanging on to Peter Vermees, their coach. I think he's like since 2009, I think was when he was hired. So like I think it's like he's the longest tenured coach in MLS, and then he is almost double the next longest, something like that. And it's because like, and the 4th longest in the league is Josh Wolf for Austin, which wasn't even a franchise 4 years ago. So, I know he kills me in fantasy all the time. Josh Wolf, we need to have a talk, bro. Come have a beer with me and let me tell you a few things about your team. But so I like KC though. I'm going to pick them to go up because they were so bad last year. As far as down years, I mean, take your pick. I think Minnesota falls off the map. The desperate scramble to bring in a coach a week before the season is crazy.
What a nightmare.
Yeah,
what a nightmare.
Their best player, Emmanuel Reynoso, is just a flake and like has had all kinds of problems with reporting to camp, and he's always getting all these little injuries, and that he hasn't been playing much in preseason. So I think Minnesota falls off the cliff. St. Louis, I think, is going to be not so great. They had a nice comeback 2-1 win to kick off CONCACAF Champions Cup earlier this week. They looked really bad in the first half and then kind of came back in the second half and won.
Don't do this to yourself. Don't do it again.
Well, I'm not going to say they're horrible, but I just don't think they're going to. They're not going to win. They're not going to be for number one seed in the West.
Yeah, no chance.
But Austin, I think falls off the map. They have one. Austin has like one really great player, and they did add to him a little bit because one of my favorite impact signings actually is Diego Rubio. I just don't know if it's enough for them. They'll probably be fighting to make the playoffs if possible. I think Cincinnati is going to struggle with Alvaro Barreal leaving last minute.
Wait, is it confirmed?
Yeah, he's going to Brazil. He's out.
Oh, wow.
And I just think they kind of had lightning in a bottle last year that will be difficult to recapture. Don't hate the Orlando thing. Philly looked pretty bad, but they did end up winning in Costa Rica. But we'll see. Philly's always good, so I'm not going to call them to suck. But my big pick, I think Miami misses the playoffs.
Well, that leads a little bit into the next question. I do realize as well, and again, your co-host is going to absolutely berate me after this, that last question was a 2-part question. So apologies for that, and apologies to John. He'll survive. We'll just give him a couple of beers at the pregame, and he'll have a good time with it. My 2 picks, my good pick will be KC. I was with you on that one. I thought they obviously made a run towards the end of the season, but they just started a little bit too far behind to get to where they are notoriously, expected to be within this league. And then on the flip side, a team that had a bad run to start, but made up for it. And to your point about Portland, I think Seattle will be looking to rebuild coming soon with some of their players getting a little older and kind of that run, Jordan Morris still kind of that lead man, and he's up there in age and injuries. How long can his knees go? The Roldan brothers, so I think maybe Seattle has a little bit of a step back this year, and the Pacific Northwest is a little bit angry with their football as they've been kind of the face of the league the last couple of seasons. But you mentioned
they do have a signing that I like from the Argentinian league up in Seattle.
De La Vega.
Pedro de la Vega, I think, is going to be good. We'll see about his adjustment. It's always like these guys that come, you know how it is. When you follow MLS, there's these guys that come in, they're either like amazing or they just don't catch and they're horrible. There's very rarely an in-between with some of these guys, but De La Vega could be it. Paintsel for LA, you mentioned, is another one.
Matt, I just don't think you can play bad with those jerseys that Seattle have. I mean, those are the best jerseys in the entire MLS.
No,
I'm a fan.
That's a take.
Maybe you guys are just old, I guess. This is the
those
new
those
era.
are good, but you just can't wear those every day. You could wear those to like a garden, like one garden party a year. You can wear that shirt, like an Easter five-a-side match or something like that. They're pastel.
That's crazy.
They're pastel. They are pastel. It's hard. It's a hard watch. But Danny, you brought it the playoffs, and that's where I want to go next as we kind of get closer to wrapping up some of the preview here. Name one team from the playoffs last season that does not make it this season. You mentioned potentially a team like St. Louis and kind of them taking a potential step back, maybe not, being number one in the West. But do you think that they fall all the way out and don't make the playoffs, or is there another team that you think kind of was on the fringe, or where are you with a team that made it last year that potentially could fall out of that top 8 or 9?
Let's start in the East, and I think, man, that's tough. The East is so competitive. I think New England. I think New England is the team. Actually, I'm willing to throw New England out there. Last year's 5 seed. As the team that just struggles to put it all together. I wanted to pick Nashville. I wanted to pick Red Bulls. I should pick Charlotte, but I can't. So I'm going to go with New England in the East. As far as the West, I think Houston. I think the wheels are falling off in Houston big time. Hector Herrera's out for the first month and a half of the season. That for them to be a hosting playoff team as a top 4 seed in the West last year, and I think they're going to be struggling to maybe even not even make the playoffs this year. So we'll see. Steve Clark's another year older. They also lost Quinones for the entire season, one of their best wingers. And then in the first match last night, in the first CONCACAF Champions Cup match, when they were at St. Louis, they lost Sebastian Ferreira 20 minutes in, another DP striker that they just brought in. He's going to miss 2 months now, if not more. So they're like missing all their DPs to injury now, and it's all a lot of uncertainty. And they got an old goalkeeper, an old back line, and they got a little bit of talent, but I think they really overachieved last year, and I think they'll sink.
I'm gonna hurt some feelings here, and I'm gonna go ahead and just to show there's no chance that Charlotte makes the playoffs this year. Not
chance.
Not even a little bit. Not even a little bit. I'm a season ticket holder. I live and die for the club. I will be there every single game. But I think there is no chance in hell with how good the East is that Charlotte FC with one DP right now makes the playoffs. I'm just going to have to give it to it straight. I'm sorry. I really am. Because I want to win. I like winning personally, but I just don't think so. And for my West, I don't want to copy. I don't think ours. Oh man, this West one's tough because I was looking through at the playoffs and there's a lot of the teams I like. I'm not believing in Sporting Kansas City that much, honestly. They
could fall off for sure.
They could fall off. I do like Polito and Saloy up top, but Johnny Russell's up there in age. Yeah. They lost their veteran Graham Zusi. I'm just not buying what they're selling.
We had a lot of negativity there, Daniel Brackett, and you really threw us both for a loop, even myself, saying that there's absolutely no chance that Charlotte was going to make the playoffs.
Wearing the scarf.
I understand, but you threw the negativity hammer down, and so I have to turn it around. I want both of you guys to give me a team that will make the playoffs that was not in the playoffs. So some positive vibes here. I don't even know where to start after what you just threw down at us, but I'm going to go up at Brams first. I'm looking at you. You're in my screen. Brams, give me a team that sneaks into the playoffs that wasn't there last year.
I got to go Colorado in the West and New York City in the East, even though they're going to start 0-1.
Okay, I'm going to go with I'm going to stick with that Galaxy pick to make the playoffs.
Figured you would.
I'm just going to stick with my gut there now. And this is an easy pick, whatever. And I'm going to go against you, DB. I'm sorry. But I'm going to go with Inter Miami making the playoffs. Too much talent on that roster. Just can't. I mean, I don't think they'll win it, but
too much talent in that rehab room for sure.
That is true. Now,
you don't think they'll win it, but we'll get to that. We'll get to whether or not Daniel actually thinks they'll win it later on. We'll just tease that there. So let's say, okay, we have Inter Miami in, and no chance in my opinion. But favorites in the East and favorites in the West from both of you guys. Daniel Brackett, you started us off here as Danny Brams went first with the positive vibes on the playoffs. So your favorite top seed coming out of each conference.
I feel bad. These are probably pretty easy favorites, but I'm going to go Columbus. Do not count out Wilfred Nancy ever, the best coach in the MLS by a mile right now. And I'm going to go with LAFC. Don't like Cherundolo, but I do like the squad. And they went far. If it wasn't for St. Louis last year, they would have been first. They made it to the finals. So I'm going to go a repeat final here, potentially.
Hate to correct you on your own show, but LAFC actually did finish third in the West last year behind Seattle and St. Louis. But my pick for favorite in the West is going to be Dallas Burn, FC Dallas. Contingent on how things go with Jesus Ferreira. He's always like on the verge of wanting away and leaving. They just signed this new partnership with Benfica. So I could see him going to Benfica in the summer, but I think that he'll have him in a good place. They brought in one of the best big money signings, this Peter Musa, a striker, to play with Ferreira, to play with Velasco. And I just really think that they are going to be very good. They got strong goalkeeping. They got good coaching. And I like Dallas's chances, unless they sell everyone on their team, which they've been known to want to do from time to time.
Heard Ferreira's going to Russia anyways, but
no.
Nico Esteves is a great coach, though, so I do like that pick a lot, and I think Nusa is going to hit the ground running after Benfica didn't really work out for him.
Did we get an East pick from you, Danny? Apologies if I missed that.
Oh, Columbus. Columbus. Yeah.
Columbus.
I can't say anything Danny didn't say already.
All righty. So now, of course, we want to touch on the Crown because obviously all three of us live in Charlotte.
It's the closest team, yeah.
Closest team. You're both wearing your kits. Danny Brams and John Hayes, as we mentioned at the upfront, are so connected and doing an amazing job of covering this team. And obviously, again, just want to plug those guys. Go check them out at Charlotte Soccer Show for the Crown Baby on X.
It's a labor of love.
Want to dive into Charlotte FC
project.
here for a little bit. Of course, the big storyline of this offseason was Dean Smith, the new hire at the gaffer role. And Danny, just want to get your take here. You mentioned, of course, he was one of your managers that was going to be the biggest impact. Kind of just, would you mind elaborating a little bit on why that is and just give us some thoughts as what you've seen so far with his first impression of the squad the last couple months?
Well, I just think Dino is the most accomplished manager of anyone who was brought in. I actually think he's got like the best resume in the league, unless you're overweighting MLS experience, which obviously some of the guys who've won cups and stuff like that over here would go above him. But I just think, you talk about a guy who's managed in the Premier League, worked his way up, earned promotion from championship, and created a blueprint that now even has Villa thriving, years after his departure. Tough to beat Dean Smith for me on paper. We're yet to see how it plays out actually on the pitch, but he seems like a really good guy who's got everyone in Charlotte fired up. And because there's a lack of real high-profile signings for Charlotte, they've added a handful of guys and brought up some guys from the Next Pro, but there's no new DPs. They're -2 DPs in the last month. And probably now, barring a miracle in the next 48 hours, we'll be waiting till summer to sign a DP. So that's fine. But by default, what that means is that Dino has to be one of the biggest impact managers of all the new managers coming in, because he's got to make sure that all of his players get something new and look like new guys. And, he has the burden of making sure that everyone that was on the team last year that came back is not the same player that they were when they left. And so I think I'm optimistic he can do it. I've been to a couple of the training sessions and things like that, just for the open media periods, and like you can see that like the guys seem to like. I remember when I would go to drills, previous coaches would do a few open trainings, and I would try to go when I could. Just who knows what you can get from watching the first 10 minutes of a practice session, but what I got is, you see how much guys are putting themselves into drills and how hard they're working, and how much that you're looking for body language and eye rolls and heads doing this and stuff like that. And you didn't see any of that this week. So I don't know. I think that Dino, it's a whole attitude thing. What people need to realize is that Charlotte FC had one of the worst dropped points and late goals conceded records of all time. It was horrific, last season. Still finished on 43 points, When you drop 25 points and you finish on 43, and you think, if we just got half of those back that we dropped, we would be hosting a playoff game instead of playing in the wild card. I think Charlotte FC has been a little underestimated by some of the media. The East has not gotten easier per se, but I do think, it's going to be tough for Cincinnati to repeat and stuff like that. So I like the Crown. They're built around young players, and we'll see, if you're good enough, you're old enough. Does that inspire you as much, Brackets, hearing if you're good enough, you're old enough? Are you still as inspired the 50th time you heard it as the first?
I am inspired, and I think what makes or breaks Charlotte FC is, the kids, right? Nikola Petkovic, Brendan Cambridge when he comes back from injury, Iri Tavares, who we just, bumped up, João Pedro. So there's going to be a ton, Agimon, there's going to be a ton of kids that are going to have to step up in a big way and fill big shoes. And then the only thing that's concerning for me, and probably the biggest concern, is not even the DPs. I don't like St. Louis did it without DPs last year, so that's not an excuse. But
the designated team.
We have one right winger right now, and that's a problem. And so we keep signing midfielders when we need wingers. And I think Scott Arfield would be great down the middle, but I just don't see him at this point in his career playing down the right with the pace that MLS provides or that needs. And it's an athletic lead league, excuse me. So, I mean, we'll see. I hope I'm wrong. I would love to be wrong. So, but we'll see. I mean, I'm going to enjoy the season no matter what anyways. So who cares?
I mean, you're just being realistic. I mean, let's just being fully honest. If I'm doing an MLS season preview, it doesn't matter what jersey I'm wearing. Like a team that snuck into the playoffs and lost, 60% of their goal production from last year is not a team that I'm picking to like somehow, do 10 points better than they did last year. But that is what I'm picking because I love Charlotte FC. So fuck it.
Yeah, and you both touched on it. And I want to just get your both thoughts, and I think it's pretty clear the impact that he does have, but there's opportunity that arises when a player like Karol Swiderski leaves, and of course Kamil Jóźwiak, the two DPs that you mentioned, Danny Brams, negative DPs this past couple of weeks. What is the broader impact? Of course, like I said, it gives opportunities for young guys to step in that both of you have touched on. Now Enzo Capetti gets to play, at his more preferred position up top, although it would have been nice to have had Enzo and Karol have a partnership up there and kind of play off each other. But more, bigger picture, I guess, Karol being, one of the more veteran players on this squad other than Ashley Westwood and have that experience. What is the overall impact of losing a guy like Karol to this lineup? And where does that, where do we kind of fill that hole, or where do you guys fill that hole for him with his absence?
What do you think, Brack?
Oh man, I think Breck Diagra is going to be the key in our fulcrum to if we have a successful season. I also really like Diani.
Oh, you like Diani?
I think if Diani can ball, that will open up Westwood, therefore gives Enzo service. I think it's that easy. And so Enzo didn't have service. And
do you think Diani will start over Urso now that Urso's been signed? Don't you think they might go with the MLS experience there? I'm not sure.
I haven't seen enough of both of them to make a point. I like both of them when I watched and caught the preseason games I could. I think Diani is younger and Urso is a little bit leggy. So I think Diani will get more minutes than Urso. But I like what they both bring to the table. And I think both open up Westwood to have more of a freeing role going forward, which is what we signed him for in the first place. To give the ball to Breck Diagra and Enzo Capetti, to put the ball in the back of the net.
Yeah, I'll just say that, yes, Karol did score our leading goal scoring numbers last year, but I think 4 of them were penalties. So if you just flip the penalties over, then I think that he's no longer our leading goal scorer. So you think of it that way. Hey, maybe it's not as hard to replace it. I think Enzo is going to score a lot more goals this year. He's feeling confident. He looks just like everything is lined up for him. So if he fails this time, it's on him. But last year may not have been the best situation for him. But this year,
of course, Bradley Wright Phillips had him listed as potential Golden Boot winner this year. So keep an eye on that. Hopefully that could be one of those things. A couple more questions for you, Danny, on Charlotte. Just a couple real quick, hot, fast takes on this one. You and John both mentioned, local fan favorite, Brandt Bronico, maybe the I don't know how else you define him other than the workhorse and the engine of this lineup the last 2 years since he came onto the roster. It doesn't look, there's always a place for a player like Brandt, of course, regardless of if it's starting or on the bench. But what does the future look like for Brandt at this club, given Dino's arrival and looking at it holistically and making some changes? Is this the end of the line for Brandt, or is there a way he can still get into this roster going forward?
That's a tough call. It's looking not great because he's hurt. So if there's mixed signs, mixed signals, if you will, because Smith, when he gave his first press conference after sort of seeing a few training sessions, Brandt was the first name that he mentioned. Dean Smith they said, what are your early impressions of the squad? He said, man, that Brandt Bronico can run forever. That was the first name that he mentioned. So you do have that. It's not like his hard work is not going to be appreciated by an Englishman who's had his guys out here running for a month to try to get better and conditioning for late in games. So he can make an impact there and he can work his way back in. But the problem is he's hurt. He's out for at least another couple weeks. It's a thigh injury. You know, that doesn't sound great for a guy who's make his name as a grinder. And so who knows what's going to happen? They go out and sign 2 guys at his position, Diani and Urso. Pekovic comes up, also plays his position. So all of a sudden, Brandt goes from being like a locked-in starter to like fighting for like in a group of like 6 guys for 2 spots. And that, just by sheer law of averages and numbers and math on that, it's a much more precarious position. And so when you say, is his time up? I'm not going to sit here and like make some bold pronouncement on that. I don't think it's end of the line, I think was the term you used. End of the line is way too finalistic for a guy who I would never underestimate, but maybe Brackets feels different.
I got a hot take here, and hence why my ex handle used to be DB's Hot Takes. Not anymore, rest in peace. But he's a guy, like you said, that Dino mentioned, who can just run for forever. So if we don't get any right wingers anytime soon, and hear me out, Dino does not want to play Diagra or Arfield out wide as like almost like a box-to-box right midfielder. I could see him slot there as a stopgap. Now, I think he's going to lose his place in the midfield. So, and this is coming from a UNCC alum. So I'm a big fan of Brett, but he has tactical flexibility. He played in an advanced position with Latanzio last season. So maybe, just maybe, I might be crazy enough to think that he could end up on the right wing at some point. Now, would that be good? I don't know, but we're going to see.
It's all interesting. We'll see what happens. Of course,
I'm out on that plan. For the record, I'm off that
plan. Don't think that's going to be on the Charlotte Soccer Show discussed. We'll see. Keep an eye out, or ears out, I guess, for the latest episode.
You got to have takes are everything in this game for sure.
We'll see what happens. Now, Danny, you guys on the preview show mentioned where you guys thought the squad was going to end up. So not gonna put you on there. If you want to go check out that latest episode, go check those guys out again. And so you can hear where they rank all of their MVPs and golden boot for the team, et cetera, et cetera. So I want to get you off the Charlotte train though with this last question. And I know the answer, but also there's a follow-up. So I got another 2-part question. Any fun road trips planned for the season to watch the Crown? And then additionally, favorite ground other than the Fortress that you've either attended or are looking forward to getting to this year?
So definitely so super excited to be doing 2 road trips to 2 of the newest MLS stadiums that I've not been to either of them. Geodis Park in Nashville, I'll be going on St. Patty's weekend, March 16th. Can't wait to go to that game. And then July 20th at the Q2 Stadium in fiery, scorching, hot, microwave oven temperature, Austin, Texas, around that time of year. I'll be going. That's my old hometown before I moved to Charlotte. Got a lot of people there. Got a big party planned. Y'all are invited. Come on down to Austin for the Charlotte match on July 20th. Anyone who's in town should show up at my brother's house for a backyard pool party that he's throwing on behalf of me, unbeknownst to him, I think, at this time. But he's going to find out eventually. So those are the 2 big trips, Nashville and Austin, big music towns, obviously. I love both towns, spend a lot of time in both. And then I will be going to D.C. I keep making this joke, as long as, we're not in a civil war as the United States of America 2 weeks before the election, as long as law and order is reigning and they're not holding military checkpoints on the roads into the Capitol 2 weeks before Election Day, then I can't wait to go see the final match of the year on decision day, because I've gone to the Charlotte at DC game both of the last 2 years, so I got to just keep making it a tradition for sure. And I love the fact that that's on decision day. So be doing those 3. As far as my favorite stadiums, I'd have to say going to DC is probably it. As I liked Orlando, I've seen a game at Philly. What else? I've been to Atlanta. I've been to Mercedes-Benz, but nothing quite like being on the waterfront there in DC, pretty close to Monument Park. There's a really great brewery that's like 5-minute walk from the stadium called Solace that I've been to a couple times. and the stadium is really cool in DC. The seats we were in last year were not as good as the ones we had the first year, but hey, what can you do? And yeah, I like their stadium. There's a really cool area at the DC stadium. That's where I met Mindy Bender. You know, meeting Mindy was probably one of the highlights of my entire 2023. And she and John and I, we all met up just randomly at this little area of DC's stadium where you can like sort of underneath the seats, you can like sort of like, it's a standing room only area that gives you kind of a really cool view from field level. So go DC, Audi Field, or whatever, whoever else wants to buy the sponsorship this year when Audi runs out of money, whatever they want to call it.
I've been to a few myself, but I've been to New York City FC, which is a joke of a stadium.
It's a disgrace. Let's just leave it at that.
And it was right after they won, so they had that unveiling of the small banner, and it was the funniest thing I've ever seen.
All right. NYCFC jokes aside, let's go. Move on.
And then I've been to Atlanta, which was a really cool stadium, but I can't pick Atlanta. And I went, probably the coolest game I've ever been to. I went to Seattle against DC United in 2015, 4-3 thriller, and that stadium was rocking, and I was really impressed. So I gotta say, Seattle's the coolest stadium I've been to.
I bet.
All right. Well, we're towards the end of the show. Notoriously, and in case you haven't picked up already, what I'm going to propose to Danny Brams is almost impossible, but we're going to do a rapid fire just to close us out here. Get some teams on the books, some awards for the season. So Danny Brams, in 2 words or less, MVP of the season.
Cucho Hernandez.
Daniel Brackett.
Ricky Puig.
Daniel Brackett. Signing of the season.
I'm going to go with Forsberg. Emil Forsberg for New York Red Bulls, even though I can't stand that team.
Danny Brams?
Forsberg's getting all the hype in preseason. I'm going to go with Diego Rubio for Austin. He somehow makes them way better than I thought they would be, and him and Driussi just dominate all year. Or else Mihailovic for Colorado.
Scratch that. Kuipers for Chicago. Haven't mentioned.
No, he's going to suck. No, Kuipers.
No, haven't mentioned them at all. But Chicago is a sleeper team. Sorry.
No, they aren't.
Changing his pick. Typical. Now you see what I deal with Danny Brams.
Chicago's not a sleeper team.
Danny Brams, MLS Supporters Shield team for you this year.
Columbus.
Brackets. He hates saying the same team or saying the same person. It's like a thing for him.
Say what you think the answer is what I would say.
LAFC.
We're not trying to embrace debate here.
Changed it. Wow. Okay. Well, now here's where we get back to his pick earlier. Danny Brackett, MLS Cup champion.
Inter Miami, I guess.
There it is. There it is. Danny Brams, MLS Cup champion for you.
Charlotte FC.
Love it. Coach of the year, Danny Brams.
Dean Smith.
Daniel Brackett.
Wilfred Nancy.
Top goal scorer for both of you guys. Whoever wants this one first, feel free to take it away.
Cucho.
Buonga.
There you guys have it. We'll keep an eye on those. We'll come back. We'll reference how everyone did. Danny Brams, thank you so much for joining us. We really, really love having you as always. Thank you for a great discussion on MLS kickoff. If you are listening to us live or as we record, MLS is about to get going, so feel free to check that out. Inter Miami is kicking us off here within the hour. We will keep everything going. But again, we are back. MLS is officially back. You guys can check out Danny Brams and John Hayes over at the Charlotte Soccer Show, or you can check them out on X at For the Crown Baby. Again, if you are in the Charlotte area, come join us on Saturday at Hop Fly. We will have a pre-party, and then we will walk over to the stadium for the game as Charlotte FC kicks off their season against NYCFC. Exciting times. You can, of course, follow Daniel and I at Full-Time Roundup. And we will have another episode for you guys tomorrow on Thursday for our normal prediction show. Daniel, Danny, awesome chatting with both of you guys. Thank you very much. Have a great evening, and hope for a championship here in the Queen City this season.